Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dark Domain. Now I know a lot of you these videos to sleep. So before you drift off, I thought it would be a fun idea. If everyone could leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the episode. Right, let's get comfy and relaxed and let's. Claire had taken countless babysitting jobs before, but something about this house unsettled her. The child, Emily, was quiet, almost too obedient, never speaking unless spoken to. There was something unnatural about the stillness of the house, as if it had been waiting for her arrival. The ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway was the only sound that broke the silence, marking time in an almost mocking rhythm. The air was thick with an invisible weight, pressing against her skin, making every breath feel heavier. A flickering security camera monitor on a wooden table, its screen filled with static and distortion. For a brief moment, a blurred, ghostly figure appears in the hallway, its shape indistinct yet menacing. The surrounding area is dark, with the only source of light coming from the screen, casting eerie reflections on the walls. The atmosphere is cold, as if an unseen presence lurks just beyond sight. She told herself it was her imagination, a trick of exhaustion and dim lighting. Yet, the sensation of unseen eyes remained, lurking just beyond her sight. The house, so quiet it should have felt peaceful, felt instead like a trap. Emily was fast asleep in her room, yet Claire couldn't shake the thought that something else was awake, something waiting in the dark corners of the house. The hours crawled by, and the weight of silence pressed down on the house like a suffocating fog. The once faint ticking of the grandfather clock now echoed through the space, stretching time into something unnatural. The dim glow of the security cameras flickered again, but Claire forced herself to ignore it. The stillness had taken on a presence of its own, something unseen but undeniably there. Just as she shifted on the couch, trying to shake off the unease, the shrill ring of the phone shattered the quiet. She grabbed it quickly, relieved for the distraction. It was Emily's parents. But as soon as they spoke, dread slithered into her stomach. Their voices sounded wrong, slow, stretched, almost as if something was forcing their mouths to move. They told her they would be late, but the words lagged, each syllable distorted. A sharp burst of static cut through, followed by a sound that sent a chill straight through her spine, breathing. Deep, deliberate, and inhuman. Claire's grip tightened around the phone as she turned to look at the hallway. The darkness felt heavier now, stretching further than before. The light at the end flickered, dimming for just a moment before stabilizing. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, just interference, just exhaustion playing tricks on her. But then, the phone rang again. Her breath hitched as she stared at the screen, no caller ID. Something inside her told her not to answer, but her hand moved on its own, pressing the call button. The voice that spoke this time was not the parents'. It was low, guttural, and filled with something ancient and unearthly. It carried an urgency, an unmistakable warning that sent ice through her veins. The words were simple, but they carried a weight of absolute terror. The phone slipped from her hands, crashing onto the wooden floor. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she forced herself to move. The house was too quiet, the air too thick, as if something was lurking just out of sight, waiting. The security monitor flickered again, static rippling across the screen. A shadow appeared in the frame, standing at the foot of the stairs, its outline warped and wrong. Her breath came in short gasps as she realized the house was no longer just unsettling. It was alive, and something inside it didn't want her to leave. Claire's body turned rigid, every muscle locked in place as cold dread crawled up her spine. Her mind screamed for her to run, to leave the house and never look back. But Emily was still upstairs, and she couldn't abandon her. The weight in the air thickened, pressing against her chest like an invisible force, suffocating and unrelenting. The house, once merely unsettling, now felt predatory, like something ancient had awakened within its walls. Every step toward the staircase felt like pushing through molasses, the very air resisting her movement. Then, the house groaned a deep, guttural noise, as if the walls themselves were shifting. The shadows in the corners thickened, stretching unnaturally, pulsating like living things. The security monitor flickered violently. Claire's gaze darted toward the screen, and for a split second, she saw it standing at the base of the stairs. A figure, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, its arms disturbingly long, fingers twitching as if eager to reach. The screen glitched again, and the figure was gone. Her breath came in shallow gasps. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. She forced herself to look down the staircase. Nothing. The bottom of the steps remained empty, but the air smelled wrong, thick with a sickly stench of decay, like rotting wood and something far worse. Then, just as she took another step, a whisper slithered through the air, brushing against the shell of her ear. It wasn't a voice, not in the way a human speaks. It was something else, something shapeless, a breath laced with a sound that carried no words but dripped with meaning. Claire spun around, heart hammering, but there was nothing behind her. Just the empty, yawning darkness of the upstairs hallway, stretching to long, to deep. The air felt colder now, filled with something unseen, something watching, something waiting. Emily was awake. She sat upright in bed, unmoving, her small frame rigid against the pale glow of the moonlight. Her lips moved silently, forming words Claire couldn't hear, as if she were speaking to someone unseen. Claire's stomach twisted. The window, which had been tightly shut earlier, was now wide open, curtains billowing despite the stillness outside. A sharp gust of cold air seeped into the room, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something rotten. The little girl's expression was vacant, eyes glassy and distant, as if she were lost in a trance. Claire rushed forward, grabbing Emily's shoulders, but the child didn't react. Her skin was unnaturally cold, a deathly chill spreading from her body. Then, Emily's small fingers curled around Claire's wrist, locking her in place. The grip was impossibly strong, her nails pressing into Claire's flesh like tiny, icy claws. A sickening dread settled in her stomach as she realized the girl wasn't looking at her anymore. Slowly, eerily, Emily turned her head toward the doorway, her vacant eyes widening ever so slightly. Claire followed her gaze, and the air in the room turned suffocating. The doorway was empty, but she knew better. She could feel it. A presence, unseen but overwhelmingly real, filled the space. It loomed there, ancient and malevolent, exuding something dark, something hungry. The walls around her seemed to pulse, as though they were breathing, expanding and contracting in unnatural rhythm. And then, from the doorway, the whispering returned. Louder now, no longer distant, no longer hidden. It wrapped around her, slithering into her ears like a cold, crawling thing, filling her mind with something she wasn't meant to hear. Claire followed her gaze, and the air in the room turned suffocating. The doorway was empty, but she knew better. She could feel it. A presence, unseen but overwhelmingly real, filled the space. It loomed there, ancient and malevolent, exuding something dark, something hungry. The walls around her seemed to pulse, as though they were breathing, expanding and contracting in unnatural rhythm. And then, from the doorway, the whispering returned. Louder now, no longer distant, no longer hidden. It wrapped around her, slithering into her ears like a cold, crawling thing, filling her mind with something she wasn't meant to hear. The phone rang again, its shrill tone piercing through the heavy air. Claire didn't dare answer, but the voicemail played automatically through the speaker. A voice, warped and crawling with malice, whispered through the static. You shouldn't have stayed. The words sent a wave of dread through her bones, cold and final. The lights flickered wildly, plunging the house into brief bursts of complete darkness. When the light returned, Emily was gone. Claire's arms were empty, her grip clutching only the stale air. Panic overtook her, but before she could react, the front door burst open with a violent force, a freezing wind howling through. The darkness beyond the threshold seemed alive, swirling and shifting. And then she saw her. Emily stood just outside, small and motionless, her head tilted slightly. But her eyes empty, and human voids locked onto Claire with an unbearable weight. The wind roared, and the house trembled as Claire felt her vision blur, her body giving way to the overwhelming and natural force around her. Darkness swallowed her whole, When she woke, the house was nothing but an abandoned ruin. The walls were crumbling, coated in years of dust and decay. The furniture was gone. The security cameras were gone. There was no sign of Emily, no sign that anyone had lived there for years. But when she reached for her phone with trembling fingers, the call history remained. The distorted voice is still there, proof of something that should have never been real. And the last voicemail, repeating on its own, over and over.